will be right back in about a minute. So, and as we get into our sponsor minute today, I just want to ask you, Tyler, how much coffee do you drink? Because it's really good for you to drink coffee. How much of it do you drink?
I'm not much of a coffee guy, but I can tell you my wife drinks enough for me and her. So
You know what? Then I'm so glad to hear that your wife drinks coffee. You should drink coffee too, because I'm very pleased to tell you that Blended Joe LLC is the sponsor of Aaron's Opinion. If you want coffee with fruit, nuts, light roast, dark roast, decaf in a bag, you want to support a cause, Patriot Blend, they've got you covered. Whether they have K cups, anything that you could ever possibly want, all be bought online right now. BlendedJoe.com, BlendedJoe.com. And of course, I guarantee you that, as I like to say, I guarantee when you are if you're at home, playing video games, or if you're on the go, going to your gym to work out, I guarantee you'll love every sip from Blended Joe. Until the end of the month, 20% off, promo code Aaron, AARON. All right. But yeah, so now let's get into stuff that's a lot more interesting. Let's talk about the Olympics. So, first of all, something that I've always wanted to know, how do you get involved with that in the first place? How do you get into the Olympics in the first place?
yeah, I mean, it's definitely not something you stumble into. That's for sure.
I thought you just signed up. It's kind of what it looks like on
Yeah,
TV.
yeah. No, there's a few more steps to it, but it's funny enough that I say you don't really just stumble into it, but in a way, I kind of did a little bit. So ultimately, here's how it works. We'll start off with what are the Olympics? What are the Olympics and what are the Paralympics? There's sometimes some confusion about how this works. So the Olympics, Paralympics, and Special Olympics are all kind of divided into their own segments. So the Olympics are held every 4 years, summer games every 4 years, and then the off year, the winter games every 4 years, right? So they alternate summer and winter games. It is the largest sporting event in the world by participation of athletes and countries and typically viewers and things like that. Like it's just huge. It's absolutely gigantic. The host city is a very big deal. It's bid on by many cities. It's selected very meticulously. Typically, they prep multiple years in advance for the games coming in. Millions and millions of dollars spent on this event. The Paralympics are the second largest sporting event in the world, second only to the Olympics. The Paralympics are also held every 4 years, alternating years. So summer games, 2 years later, winter games, 2 years later, summer games. They are also held in the host city for the Olympics. Also, millions and millions of dollars spent on the Paralympic Games. The one thing two things that divide the Olympics and Paralympics. Number one, the Olympics are for able-bodied athletes. The Paralympics are for the physically disabled athletes. So wheelchair, amputee, visually impaired, cerebral palsy. That's where you'll find these athletes in the Paralympic Games typically. And then the only other thing that divides these two events is typically 1 week. So minus the pandemic, actually right now is when the Olympic Games would have been happening in the Tokyo 2020 era, and the Paralympics would have been happening in about 3 weeks. So they're very similar. In fact, the word para in Paralympics means parallel. It runs similar track. The Special Olympics is it's a little bit more of a loose-knit kind of concept. There's a lot of organizations around the world that do Special Olympics event year-round, and it's typically more for the cognitively impaired athlete. So still a fantastic organization, lots of great things that they do, very wonderful. Not really the same thing as the Olympics/Paralympics. So just starting there, people understand kind of the divide of those three things. Um, when I first started playing goalball, like I said, I went to sports education camp when I was about 15, and became very good at the sport pretty quickly. I was picked up right away by a local youth team, a local club team. They said, wow, this, I came from a family of athletes. And they were like, this is great. Can you come and play on our team? And so I was like, great, that sounds good. So one of my very first games I got done playing, and the coach for the youth team, the Michigan youth team, was like, we have our national championships, our junior national championships in Florida coming up this fall. Do you want to go? And I was like, you guys go all the way to Florida to play goalball? That's so cool, right? Like, it was my first taste of traveling. Right? I had not been outside of Michigan my entire life. Since that time, I've been to 26 of the United States, and I've been to 15 different countries competing in the sport of goalball. So traveled, all over the world doing this. And I started competing, and I went to these tournaments, and then I was approached by the USA coaches, and they're like, hey, do you want to come out to a tryout camp for the USA goalball team? I was like, whoa, you guys have a USA goalball team? That's cool. You guys go to other countries and stuff? Yeah, we travel all over. Wow, that's awesome. So I got invited and went to my first training camp, and I made the team, right? And then I was like, all right, we're training for the Olympics or the Paralympics. And I was like, there's Paralympics for this? Like, so like I kept going through these steps, right? I got invited by the coaches. I made the team. I was training with the team. And I started to learn about how big this thing really is and how we actually go to the Paralympics. So I say there's multiple steps, that you don't really just stumble into it. I kind of did in a little bit of a way, because I went to my first international tournament when I was 17 years old and didn't realize how big it was until I really started getting into it. So the Paralympics, marching into the stadium for the opening ceremonies, is just something that is difficult to describe. You go through this whole process. You've trained for a really long time. You've prepared your body. You've worked with your team. You've worked with your coaches. About a week and a half or so before you leave to go to the Paralympics, you're finishing up your training, and you go through what's called processing, which means you go to the Olympic training centers or another designated site, and you get taught how to talk to the media. They give you a whole bunch of stuff. I got suitcases full of shirts and pants and hats and shoes and opening ceremony uniform, closing ceremony uniform, media uniform, medal ceremony uniform. Like, there's just the list went on. I mean, I have a wardrobe full of stuff from going to these games. You just get overwhelmed with this stuff, and you go across seas or to wherever the games are, and you're just nervous, and everything is kind of building to this. And you go to the opening ceremonies where your whole team, the whole USA delegation, you got 140 athletes or whatever the tally is, and everybody's dressed up in the same opening ceremony uniform, and you're at the rally point, and you march into the stadium, and there's fireworks going off, and a stadium full of just thousands of people cheering, and you're waving to the crowd, and it just feels like it's beyond you. It's a show, but it's a great show. It's a collection of nations and athletes that supersedes politics and goes beyond. I feel like the tragedies and the wars and the things that we have in this world. It seems to surpass all of those things and bring people together. And it's just an overwhelming feeling. It's just so amazing to be a part of an experience like that. And it's hard to describe.
Yeah, it is. It does seem that way. Well, who was? Did you have any fascinating conversations with any of the other athletes from any other countries? Did you have a chance to have a sit down or maybe a 30-second conversation with anyone from another country, talk about their life, how they got into their sport? Yeah. Do the athletes, interact? When the games aren't going on, do they like interact, say hi to each other, talk, stuff like that?
Sure. And I mean, within our sport, we've gotten to know a lot of the other teams. We know, a lot of the guys from Finland, from Sweden, we're on talking terms, first name basis with some of the guys from Germany and Brazil, and yeah, it's a big international community. And then we get opportunities to go and you know not only interact with these other athletes from our sport at these events, but typically following the Olympic and Paralympic Games, there's the White House visit, right? All the athletes are invited to the White House. So now I get to mingle with other sports, Olympic and Paralympic athletes, and meet guys like Michael Phelps and other big names like that, where, it's just getting to know these folks, and
Sure,
it's
sure. So
neat.
what was the most I've this is really weird. I've never actually had the privilege or opportunity to ask anyone this question. So if you spoke with people like Michael Phelps or any other famous athletes, what was maybe the most interesting thing they said to you, or maybe like kind of describe an interesting thing you learned from them or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like these are big name people, right? And some pretty famous folks that we were able to interact with, and very, very, very cool people, and something that I feel like most people don't know. And I guess when you think like the big names like that, I think like 2004, the gymnast, the Ham brothers, pretty well known guys. We got some pictures with them, and like, I guess some of those bigger name athletes, they get a lot of sponsorship, they do a lot of training, but so many of the athletes, the Olympians and the Paralympians, you have to understand, like, these are dads and moms. They're professionals. They work 9 to 5, and or they're going to school, or like they don't just live and breathe their sport. They, don't get me wrong, they're machines. They train, they prep themselves, they make our country proud. But it's not like there's this big warehouse somewhere where all these athletes just kind of hang out and that's all they ever do is train. Like, these are real people, right? So it's cool interacting with them and kind of getting to know them as an individual, and what makes them tick, because they're just, for lack of a better term, they're just average people, but that's probably the coolest experience, I think.
All right, all right. Well, we have it on record here. Olympic athletes are just average. All right, got it,
All
got
right.
it. Okay then. All right. Well, okay. Well, they'll just have to skip through that part of the recording, I guess. All
I
right.
guess so.
But that's a really important. It's a really touching life lesson. Is to understand, kind of teasing that out a little bit, but to understand that really athletes are really just going about their lives. Many of the Olympic athletes are teenagers. They haven't even seen their 20th birthday, many of them. So uh, that's that. I think that's really accurate. So,
Yeah.
what was your um, favorite Olympics? 2004. You said 2004 Athens. I know. I don't. I mean, I don't watch the Olympics. So 2004 Athens, 2008 Beijing, and
Yep.
what was it? 12?
16 was Rio. So the most
Oh
recent
yeah.
summer
Hmm.
games. Yep. Um, I, I don't know if I don't know if I would pick one as a favorite per se, in the sense that 2004 was my first one, and that stands out for various reasons. We won a bronze medal in 2004. I was so let's see, I would have been 20 years old, just turned 20 years old. Um, it was very special to me because my dad was able to go and see me play. My dad had been a big supporter of my career for a long time. And the way that we won the bronze medal was very movie-esque. We were down at halftime by quite a bit, and we fought back. I scored 4 of the 5 goals for our team. We won the game by 1 point. A kind of a last second penalty shot that I was able to score, and it was just so cool how we had kind of come back, and it was very special to me. My dad was there watching, and just very, very awesome. Beijing, we went to Beijing. Unfortunately, we didn't make the medal